Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a good conference. And hello to all those in the panel there. The short talk here is on some metaphysical, epistemological, and ethical issues in futures research. I thought I'd start with applying Occam's razor to philosophy itself. Philosophy explores what is, and how do you know it's true. What is, of course, is metaphysics, and how you know is true is epistemology. Other areas of philosophy, such as ethics and aesthetics, are, in my judgment, just subsets of metaphysics and epistemology. So the question for us then is, hence philosophy of foresight would ask, what is foresight, and how do you know the foresight is true? Foresight is both the act of anticipation and the content of such anticipation. We can know true or false, it rained yesterday, and we can know true or false, it is raining now, like it is in Washington, D.C. at the moment. But we cannot know true or false, it will rain tomorrow. We can certainly create forecasts of the probability of rain based upon models, based upon knowledge of past phenomena, but we do not know the future before it happens. Since there are many more variables in predicting weather than predicting boiling point of water, even scientific certainty is also a matter of degree. Certain scientific statements only have a few variables, and others have many, many, many variables, like the weather forecasting. And then when it comes to humans, it's even more so. Not only are there many complex variables influencing human behavior, the nature of the variables themselves are changing, such as the nature of work is changing. The nature of wars are changing. For those of you who do some projection data forecasts, you know that a lot of things that you are forecasting themselves, that those variables are changed enough that they're no longer comparable to the previous times. So, back to the metaphysical question, what is the human future? The simple definition is, it is that which is going to happen, that which follows the present. Yet some say the future is none of our business, since the future is predetermined by God. This is a metaphysical assumption not generally accepted by futurists, who tend to believe that the human future emerges from the present, and that human choice is increasingly a factor in what emerges as the future of human society, culture, and civilization. Some futurists believe the future is a co-evolution with God, divinity, or that which is beyond our understanding. In either case, we cannot be certain about what does not exist yet for humanity. Flying saucer could land on the conference building and dramatically change everybody's scenarios there. So, we cannot study the future directly, but we can study it indirectly by studying change in the past and present and using that knowledge to stimulate our intuition, insight, and imagine alternative futures. Hence, we prefer to say there are many possible futures for humanity. I prefer to think that the future can be thought of as a set of ideas or possibilities of which we cannot know their validity or certainty, but we can assess their probability and likelihood based upon human judgments, as in Delphi forecasting, and scientific knowledge. We can also project potential impacts, but again, based upon past dynamics of change and our mental models of what we think are the cause and effect links about how the world works. The introductory chapter in Futures Research Methodology 3.0 lists 5 philosophical assumptions about futures thinking. 1. You cannot know the future, but a range of possible futures can be known. The likelihood of a future event or condition can be changed by policy, and policy consequences can be forecasted. 3. Gradations of foreknowledge and probabilities can be made. We can be more certain about some, such as a sunrise, then we can be certain about the rise of the stock market. The former has no human involvement, the second one does. There are essentially no changes in the variables that make the sunrise prediction, but the variables in the stock market are changing all the time. 4. No single method should be trusted by itself. Hence, cross-referencing methods could improve foresight. The weakness of one method can be made up by the strength of another method, and vice versa. Since every explicit metaphysical statement is an implicit epistemological statement, and that since the future cannot be known, then there is no certainty about methods to know the future either. This is why Futures Research Methodology 3.0 shows the strengths and weaknesses of 37 different methods to explore the future. 5. Humans will have more influence in the future than they did on the past. Hence, increasing the use of participatory methods should include a broad and deep range of human thought that will shape the future. The Art of Conjecture, 1967, by Bertrand de Jouvenel, is probably the best work on the philosophy of foresight. If you have not read it, I strongly recommend that you read it. And if you don't have time to read the whole book, it's a big one, have it on your shelf somewhere and delve in it from time to time. It's really a classic work and everybody should know it. Among many of his insights, he shares several ways the mind makes assertions about the future, such as correlations, analogy, extrapolation, lead indicators, causality, railway or railroad, and the weakness of each of these ways the mind makes assertions about the future. For example, the railway or railroad thinking. It lines up countries from the richest GDP per capita at the front of the train to the poorest GDP per capita at the back of the train. As each railroad car in this train, or in this analogy of the country, in this example, passes the same landmarks X, Y, and Z, they will experience reality in the same way that previous cars experienced it as they passed X, Y, and Z. And then if you know the distance to X, Y, and Z and the speed of the train, then you can forecast when a country will experience what. As the poorer countries get richer, this railway approach assumes they will go through the same social evolution as the richer countries did before. But we know not all countries develop in a linear way. As the GDP per capita of Kuwait caught up with the United States, it did not go through the same social evolution as the United States. Another example is causality. And you really should read The Art of Conjecture to go through each of these. I'll just give you a couple examples, just to give you a flavor for it. Another example is causality. We observed that B always followed A, and then at some point we say A caused B. How many times do we have to make this observation before we claim causality? Not clear. But an unknown factor C could cause both A and then cause B. If a factor C changes, then we'll be surprised when B does not follow A, and our prediction will be wrong. Hence, it's more reasonable to start talking more about causality in our futures work. Think more in terms of correlation in our futures work than causality. There's not enough time in this short presentation to review all the ways the mind makes assertions about the future and the weakness of each, as explained very well in Bertrand de Jouvenel's The Art of Conjecture. But the point should be clear that a combination of approaches and methods is likely to be more useful than just relying on one or two methods. The increasingly complex global future possibilities are being shaped by the interaction of many cultures and many different views. To better take this complexity into account, we should increase the breadth and depth of participatory methods. This will help us include the increasingly complex inputs from around the world to better understand future possibilities. Bertrand de Jouvenel also argues that if you do not consider the possible consequences of our choices, then our freedom to choose is an illusion. Imagine you're in a room, you got two doors, and someone says, which door do you want to go through? Well, natural question is, well, what's behind the two different doors so that you can make a choice, right? If there's no way to know what's behind the doors, or you don't look what's behind the doors, your choice is not a free choice. You're not freely judging one versus another. Hence, no freedom exists without forecasting. This is an amazingly blunt comment that I don't hear futurists making too often. Hence, there's no freedom without forecasting, no freedom of choice. This is an interesting insight that futurists should include when justifying foresight in political decision-making processes. Another philosophical assumption about the future that is also often not acknowledged is we use the phrase plan for the future. That carries an assumption about the nature of the future that is different than the assumptions behind the phrase plan or invent the future. Planning for the future, including for implies that the future is predetermined. And all you can do about it is get ready. One plans for the rain. One plans for the flood. One plans for a predetermined future. However, if one believes the future can be shaped or influenced by human action, then one plans or shapes or invents the future without the use of the word for. And last, a consideration of ethics. In futures research, especially teaching futures research and foresight to the younger generation, has some unique ethical implications. Focusing mostly on negative futures can make people depressed and unwilling to try to improve our prospects of the future. Focusing mostly on positive futures can make people naive and feel it is unnecessary to do anything to improve a predestined positive future. This is not like teaching algebra. There's consequences, psychological consequence to how you teach future stuff. The future we expect or believe consciously or unconsciously influences our behavior. Hence, affecting people's view of the future is to affect their behavior without necessarily being fully conscious of this influence. Hence, it seems more ethical to share both positive and negative futures, our future positive and negative future developments, with plausible ways that both can emerge in the present, so that human judgment is clearly called into play. I wish you good luck in this panel. It's a very complex subject, hard to capsulize in a small little piece, but I hope you'll have a good discussion, and I look forward to what happens. Thank you. Bye-bye.